This video is brought to you by your contributions on Patreon. Click here if you want to help keep the lights on down at the History Factory. Just before we start, this video is part 4 in a 6-part series on world revolutions done as a collaborative project with Cypher, the cynical historian. If you click up at the little eye in the corner, you can go to his channel and find part 1 in the series. Don't worry, we'll be here when you get back. Hey comrades, in the early years of the 20th century, a spectre was haunting Europe. The forces of Victorian capitalism and industrialization resulted in a lot of wealth, but for very few people. Many worked very long hours in dangerous conditions. They produced giant amounts of wealth that only went to their bosses. Enter the mid-19th century philosopher Karl Marx. He wrote that this increased inequality would not be able to sustain itself, and that at some point in the future, workers of the world would overthrow their rulers and implement a new world order, one without inequality between anyone, a state called communism. By the First World War, many activists across the world were seeing this battle between distant monarchs as the ultimate sign that it was time for the world order to change. In the age of nationalism, they believed in creating governments working to make the world into that communist dream Marx wrote of. Governments moving in this direction are the dictionary definition of socialists. The idea was to create a communist world revolution, overthrowing capitalism all over the planet and organizing a truly global working class against the bosses, kings, and presidents that ruled over them for too long. This is the story of that revolution. The true spark of this revolution came in October of 1917, or November by the Gregorian calendar. The Russian Empire, one of the most unequal, feudal empires on Earth, overthrew their emperor, the Tsar Nicholas II, and placed in a new government run by the Socialist Bolshevik Party. After a long civil war, the first socialist country, the Soviet Union, would replace the old empire. Communist revolutions would succeed across the Caucasus, and Ukraine as well. The first red banners on Earth would spiral across the globe. German workers, inspired by Marx and the revolution in Russia, rose up against the emperor, resulting in nationwide strikes. This was the first domino that led to the Germans ending the First World War, toppling the monarchy, and establishing a new Weimar Republic. Similar revolutions occurred in Hungary, Finland, and Italy. The Chinese Kuomintang nationalists allied with the Chinese Communist Party to embolden the revolution against regional warlords. Before anyone knew it, the world was on fire, and right after the war to end all wars. In 1918 and 1919, it looked possible that capitalism would disappear from much of Europe, and with colonies, much of the world. In 1919, the Comintern was founded, an organization to coordinate these revolutions across the globe. The optimism of Marxists in this period would be short-lived, however. In America, it resulted in the first Red Scare, actively oppressing Marxist activists in their borders. Liberals in Europe felt they either needed to side with these socialists or go to the dark embrace of fascism. Fascism is an ideology that could be defined as the exact opposite of Marxism. It's fiercely nationalistic and embraces rigid hierarchies. The threat of these movements pushed Marxists into supporting a popular front, an alliance with liberal capitalists against fascism. This would be reflected in both the Spanish Civil War and the shaky alliance that defeated fascism in the Second World War. On the behest of these new liberal allies, the Comintern was formally disbanded in 1943. After World War II, there was a new wave of revolutions. They were not as strong as in 1918, but Marxist groups held a lot of sway in countries like Greece, France, and Italy, as they were credited for fighting fascism in their country the entire war. However, in these countries, they'd never quite passed the threshold to form a government. The story is a little different in Eastern Europe. Communist movements formed governments across the region, sometimes even without the support of the Soviet Union. The only survivor of the first wave of revolutions, Western media criticized that these new socialist governments took power with undemocratic means, but nonetheless, they proliferated. In the 1960s and 1970s, liberation front movements around the world took up the banner of Marxist revolutions in an effort to push out colonial rulers and dictators. They even thought they'd find allies in the New Left, civil rights movements, and groups like the Black Panthers, but you'll need to wait until next week to learn more about them. These movements began to fade in the mid-1970s. In the West, a new wave of conservative rulers, such as Margaret Thatcher in the United Kingdom or Ronald Reagan in the United States, made being left-wing an uncouth thing to be. In socialist countries in East Asia, new free market reforms started to kill the revolutionary zeal. In the 1960s, a new type of left-wing, very different from these guys, began to pop up around the world, primarily in young people. This revolution is the subject of next week's video, and if you want to see it, go say hi to Cypher at The Cynical Historian. How did this revolution touch your country? Tell me about it down below. If this is your first video and want to see more like this, hit that subscribe button. And everyone, if you like this video, share it with a history buff in your life, and come back soon for the next Step Back.